Hey, happy Saturday. This is Minding Your Business with the Lancaster Chamber of Commerce. I'm Chris Spiker of Antelope Valley Florist, board operator Kenneth Guzman.
Hello!
Kenneth. And from Goldstein Digital, Aaron Goldstein, co-host.
Hey.
Hey, Aaron, who's our first guest today?
Our first guest today is Art Thompson, the CEO of Sage Cheshire Aerospace and A2ZFX.com.
Hey, welcome, Art.
Hey, how you doing, Chris?
Good. You're a busy guy.
You're pretty busy too. It's always nice seeing your smiling face, though.
Well, where did I meet you? Like at a Board of Trade event?
I think so, or
Board of Trade or Chamber of Commerce?
Chamber of Commerce.
Might have had to do with aerospace.
Probably.
Yeah.
Had a few people there.
Yeah. How did you get so involved in aerospace?
Well, boy, back in the late 70s, I started down with Northrop in Hawthorne at Plant 1, and working with a few guys. Worked with John Cashin, Fred Oshiro, Irv Whalen, a small group of guys pushing around some ideas. We put together a tabletop model that we took to the Pentagon to sell them on the idea of the stealth bomber. So that was kind of my start in dealing with aerospace and Northrop.
So you started at the top.
Well, I was actually at the bottom, but it apparently ended up being, a pretty good start, because we were a small group of engineers pushing around some ideas and concepts. Advanced systems didn't exist yet, so we ended up doing about, 14 different programs. 3 of them are probably public knowledge, but it was a good run. We did a lot of development of radar cross-section vehicles.
It seems like both of your businesses, the Sage Cheshire and the A2ZFX, they are about people coming to you with ideas.
Yeah, we're really not good about going out after customers. It's mostly word of mouth, people coming to us. It'd be good if we actually had a marketing plan. But fortunately, we're popular.
Could you handle any more success?
You can always do more. One of the things that people know about me is I tend to never say no. It's like people bring a lot of crazy projects. So we have, a lot of the stuff from the, with Sage Cheshire, we do work for Boeing, Lockheed, Northrop, Scale Composites, NASA, Gulfstream. So there's a lot of general business for aero shapes and fairings. But then we also do crazy things like Red Bull Stratos.
Right. But we're going to talk about that.
Yeah. Well, we had, in the middle of Red Bull Stratos, we had Pima Air and Space Museum come to us, wanted to know if we could build the world's largest paper airplane. So here we are, a small aerospace company in the middle of doing, serious aerospace projects. We ended up doing a 45.5-foot long, 24-foot wingspan, traditional dart-shaped paper airplane.
Did we see that in the paper?
It was in the paper, and they actually, there's some YouTube video too. It was for Pima Air and Space Museum, wanted to get kids excited about aerospace and science. And that's one of the things we're really big on, is encouraging STEM education, encouraging kids to think about how to get into the industry. That's a big thing for us. So we flew it we took it up with a Sikorsky helicopter to 1,400 feet. It weighed 800 pounds, took 20 gallons of wood glue to put together, and we let it go at about 60 knots, planing off, and it flew just short of a mile in flight. But the end goal is really to inspire kids. So we were getting feedback from kids in Australia and New Zealand and Europe.
They were helping to design it and...
Yeah, it was to encourage kids' involvement with it. So there was a kid, Arturo, out of Arizona, in Tucson, I believe he was. And so he was one of the kids involved in naming the plane and being involved in the design, which was cool, because it was a traditional folder design. Well, we did that 6 days after manned flight 1 for Red Bull Stratos. So, typical, how we are. You and I have talked before.
You got to have a couple of months between your
events.
events.
On fire, you're running around doing 12 different things. And that's what we enjoy. I think I get bored if we weren't doing too many things. So.
But promotion-wise, you have to spread these out. So
Yeah,
that
it would probably be a good idea.
You could enjoy the notoriety a little more on each project.
Yeah, probably be a good idea.
So the Red Bull Stratos project went 24 miles up?
Yeah, 24 and a half miles up, went to 128,000 feet.
Did the balloon stop, the helium balloon, did it stop rising at that point?
Yeah, well, we intentionally put a particular amount of helium into the balloon so it'll stop at a float altitude. And you put a little bit extra helium in, lift, for positive lift to break through different stratus layers of the atmosphere. So our target was 127. We ended up going to 128, which was a good thing because it gave us a little bit more speed on the jump, which was nice.
The jumper didn't need any more speed, did he?
Well, you can always have more. Yeah.
So this fella called you, Felix.
Well, Felix and I knew each other from before.
Okay.
Because A to ZFX, we do all the Red Bull can cars, we do their DJ stands, their promotional vehicles, and event, any of their support equipment.
That's a great
So
gig.
it's pretty good. They actually, when they first came to us, they were a new company in the U.S., and I had turned them down for a year and a half, and then finally agreed to build the first couple vehicles that they did, and then that turned into 5 more, and then 20, and then 100. And we've done over 900 vehicles for
Yeah,
Red
I
Bull
see like
Stratos
6 of them on a truck on the freeway.
Yeah,
What is
exactly.
that?
And so while we're doing aerospace work with Sage Cheshire, completely separate, area, because aerospace companies don't like having a company that builds movie props and specialty vehicles building their aerospace projects. So while we were, doing, we build the Red Bull vehicles with A to ZFX. And we've done over 900 vehicles for Red Bull over the years. My joke is that we built 900 vehicles, but we probably built 3,000 cans because the girls don't drive into parking garages, right?
So you're always getting calls to fix them.
There's always a can being destroyed somewhere, but it gets people's attention.
Yeah.
And so they're fun vehicles to produce for them. We do a lot of other companies also, but Red Bull. I was on a project with NASA one time. We were in Tennessee, and we were all in a car getting off the freeway. And as we're getting off the freeway, a can car drives by, and all the NASA guys look over at me, and start tugging on my shirt. Art, look, a can car, And we tried to chase down the car, but the girl was too quick. So
The car was too aerodynamic.
yeah.
So that is that's the other side of the house. You kind of pull a curtain
Yeah.
between the two.
Yeah, so Felix, he and I knew each other from before because we were doing vehicle work
So
for them.
there was no government money
And-
involved in that.
Nope, not at all. So that was the big thing, is people look at Red Bull Stratos as being some kind of a publicity stunt.
Not at all.
But it really wasn't. That's
Yeah.
one thing I get very testy about it, is that the big thing about Red Bull Stratos was we were trying to stress the fact that it had to be about true science. When Felix first called me, he says, "Do you know Joe Kittinger?" I said, "Yeah, I know Joe. He's the guy who did the jump in 1960, and he held the record for over 52 years. And Joe's an amazing friend, amazing man. He's one of my idols. He worked with Dr. Stapp, who was known for the rocket sled work.
Right.
So Joe was, a Vietnam vet, spent time in Hanoi Hilton. He was the first person to fly solo across the Atlantic. So I looked up to Joe quite a bit. And Felix said, "Well, do you know, you know Joe, so if you were going to break Joe's record of jumping from 102,800 feet, how would you go about doing it?" And I said, "Well, Felix, it's 3 o'clock in the morning in Austria. Why don't you go back to sleep, and I'll give you a call in the morning and give you my ideas on how we break Joe's record."
You said I saw the video. It was an 86-page
Yeah, it
treatise.
was 87 page
And
proposal that I put together.
Probably once you got into it, it was a few hundred more pages.
Yeah, well, they what I did was I flew over to Austria and presented it to Dietrich, the owner of Red Bull, and their management. and gave them the idea. And we actually had code names for the different areas, like the spacesuit section was called Tuxedo, and the balloon area was Sigma, and and I had this entire proposal, and we actually pitched a couple different ways to go. One was the traditional classic balloon jump, which Joe did, and the other was using a rocket plane. So,
A little more expensive?
yeah, quite a bit more expensive. But I knew that they had, a friend of mine, Rick Surfoss, was the chief judge for X Prize, so I knew he would have, some interesting background. So I called on him, and when we went over, we ended up, they spent 2 years reviewing the data and asking me questions until they finally said, we're going to do this thing. So,
Where can people find that video?
The video is on, the short videos are on YouTube, and there's actually a full documentary on it, which is pretty good too.
And how many GoPro?
I think they can look that up on Red Bull's site. They might be able to see the documentary. It used to be on Netflix.
How many GoPros?
Well, we had 19 high-definition cameras. I actually bought the 5 GoPros that were on Felix, which is classic video. It was from the local Best Buy, so free plug for them. But yeah, Felix went 843.6 miles per hour in free fall in 50 seconds.
Provided by industry.
Yeah, and the benefit went back to the Air Force and NASA. A lot of the science, we actually changed some of the things that the Air Force and NASA are doing based on the technology we developed. So.
Talking with Art Thompson from Sage Cheshire Aerospace and A to Z FX. Stick around, we're gonna come right back. And we're back. This is Minding Your Business with the Lancaster Chamber of Commerce. I'm Chris Spiker of Antelope Valley Florist. Kenneth Guzman, board operator.
Hello.
Thank you. Aaron Goldstein,
Hey.
co-host. Who is? Oh, we're still talking with Art. Yeah, hey, Art, welcome back.
Thanks.
Where did you get the name Sage Cheshire?
People ask that a lot, and I heard you stumbling on the name. It's funny because when I talk to people from like Germany or other, they really have a hard time with that name sometimes. And so, but sage, by definition, if you look up in Webster's, the name sage is wisdom with age. So here we are in the desert, sage plant. It's kind of like the sage school. Is the same thing, which I happen to be involved in the renaming with Stacy Bryant and them, which
At
is
this
great.
moment.
Yeah, I'm actually after this meeting going back there, and it's really an honor to be part of that. So that's cool. The community involvement.
You're very involved in the community.
I try a lot.
Yeah.
So sage is wisdom with age in the plant because we're in the desert, and Cheshire is the Cheshire cat, like Alice in Wonderland, for the disappearing cat. So that has to do with my background with stealth and radar cross sections.
All we can see is the stripes.
That's kind of
And the
idea.
smile.
And the smile, yeah. So the big smile.
I like it. So this is all about bringing you into the next century here.
Hopefully, yeah.
Good.
So,
And
yeah.
beyond.
And beyond, right? I mean, really, like with Stratos, we were looking at life support systems, and a lot of companies, Spaceship Company and Virgin Galactic and SpaceX, they're looking at how do we put people into space. What we were really looking at is how do we bring people back? How do we bring them down? What are the safety systems? And a lot of those systems now have been applied back with the life support, because like the capsule design with the hingeless door and all that, we pressurized the capsule to 8 psi, which is 16,000 foot equivalent. And the reason we did that was to stop the risk of decompression sickness. Well, they have issues with high altitude aircraft like the U-2 since the 50s, flew at a 22,500 foot pressurization, which is kind of like taking you and in 30 minutes putting you on Everest.
Yeah.
And so what we did was we worked with the Air Force building a U-2 cockpit fuselage mock-up, and then we took it to the altitude chamber where we tested our capsule. We pressurized it to 8.5 psi, which is 15,000 foot, and we showed that we could take a pilot and stop the decompression sickness issue that they've had since the 50s. And so
Wow.
now, since last year, all of the U-2s went from a 22,500 foot pressurization to a 15,000 foot, and they stopped decompression.
They call that the Thompson effect?
Yeah, no, I wish.
Yeah, .com.
Yeah.
So that's how you ended up in the Antelope Valley.
Well, that's part of you know,
Yeah.
like our goal with Stratos was to prove that it's about science. It's
Yeah.
about trying to make a difference in life support and safety systems. Originally, when I talked to Red Bull, they were like, well, can we tie a rope around him and just take him up with a balloon? And I said that would be completely crazy, you know.
Thanks for asking. Won't
Yeah.
work.
So, you know, I said with the people we've got involved and the fact that everybody is so risk averse and the liability issues, I said we have to be better at our safety systems than what Joe did in his time. He was in an open basket, and you know, half the people who tried to break Joe's record died in the process. And during that time was Nick Pantania, who did it in '67, who died. Everybody got sued afterwards. So nobody wanted to do that kind of jump. So
There's some risk involved.
there is risk involved. It's a really dangerous environment. And that's why I keep pushing for the space companies, you know, that want to do private space, that I think they should be wearing spacesuits because it's a hostile environment. If something goes wrong, at least during the testing part of it,
Right.
they should be wearing a spacesuit.
Wow.
Because if the spaceship decompresses, you have 14 seconds and you're dead.
It's a good thing to know for space travel.
Yeah, next time you do space travel.
Aaron, when you're thinking about spending $200,000 to go into near space,
Just remember, ask for a
that.
spacesuit.
Get a suit. Get a suit.
Yeah.
Spend the extra
I
$100,000.
just think if you're going to spend that much money, you want to look like a spaceman. I don't want to go without, you know, why wear spandex?
Wearing like
you
a
know?
t-shirt
Yeah,
and
I want the
spandex.
helmet. I want to look like the full deal, you know.
You know, those spacesuits are expensive
Yeah,
because
we're actually the only company to buy spacesuits. So our little tiny company, we're actually the first company to ever buy spacesuits because they've only been owned by government agencies like the Air Force and NASA. So we bought 3 of them. The final suit that Felix wore is donated to the Smithsonian Air and Space Museum.
cool.
So it's on permanent display with the capsule, the final capsule is on permanent display. So that's really cool. And I had told Dietrich, you'll have your name and brand
Yeah.
in the Smithsonian
Wow.
forever. Which
what
is
is
a
that?
pretty,
What is that worth?
yeah, well,
Yeah.
they're actually, their ROI, so not to say that they didn't get huge benefit back, but their return on investment for Red Bull Stratos was $3.9 billion.
Wow.
So you want to say, what is the best marketing event ever of all time on Earth?
Trivia question.
Red Bull Stratos. It's
Wow.
actually, they've changed some university classes and they have studies based on Red Bull Stratos as a marketing event. We had the highest constant streaming on YouTube and Google all at the same time was 500,000 people with Usain Bolt in the Olympics. The next closest one was 250,000 people for the royal wedding. So when we told Google, well, so 500,000, they're like, no, you're never going to get that.
Yeah.
On Tuesday, on our failed attempt, when we hit 1.2 million people all at the same time, Google and YouTube decided to open up the feed. And on the final day, on Sunday, the 14th, we hit 9.5 million people. So it was over 18 times the number of people ever. They predicted that we took up 7.5% of the world's internet bandwidth. And so because Google was dropping them as fast as they were coming on, they couldn't keep up with the feed. Discovery Channel canceled all their live stuff and did live coverage on Red Bull Stratos to try and take up some of the load. So pretty cool.
Very cool. You had no idea.
Yeah, pretty cool.
Just trying to solve a problem.
Just trying to solve a problem. I was a little shocked at, you know, I mean, I knew it was going to be big because I always told Dietrich, this will be the biggest thing Red Bull's ever done.
Yeah.
And I was even a bit shocked by it all. So they definitely got their return on investment.
And they found a guy in the Antelope Valley to work on this. You.
Well, the Antelope Valley is really aerospace heaven. That's the thing, is wherever I go worldwide to give talks or you know, work on projects, I always tell people that wherever you go, anybody in aerospace came through this valley at one time or another.
Yeah.
Anybody, all the significant groups. I mean, right back to the Wright brothers, the second choice for flying Kitty Hawk was in the Antelope Valley.
I never heard that before.
Wow.
It had to do with the fact that it's really windy here.
Which
You can
is-
fly stuff without actually moving, you know?
Right.
So, and that was kind of the purpose. So, but there's so many significant things. I consider like the museum up at Edwards Air Force Base, which I'm also vice chair on. That museum, it to me is so significant because it is the right stuff museum. All the major aircraft development, first jet, you know, the SR development, the space shuttles all came through this valley. The flying wing for Jack Northrop, the X-1, the first mock aircraft. You look through history and every significant thing in aerospace, almost every single one of those started at Edwards Air Force Base.
Yeah.
And so to me, the Right Stuff Museum, the Edwards Air Force Flight Test Museum, is really close to my heart because you look at the people in this industry like Bob Cardenas and Bob Hoover and all these, Chuck Yeager,
These were our
Joe
neighbors.
Kittinger, they were all neighbors. All those guys lived here,
Yeah.
you know, and these were significant people that I was really privileged to call a lot of these guys my friends. I mean, I'm 60 years old, but there was a time when I was the kid, you know, and they looked at me as the kid hanging out with a lot of these older guys, you
Yeah.
know.
Well, the valley and the significance that we have here, that's part of what we call AV Nice. I mean,
And
it's the amazing conversation.
People don't understand the gem that we have here, you know. I get frustrated when people down below are like, oh yeah, Antelope Valley, okay. But we are so blessed to be part of this community, and aerospace significance. It's amazing. I mean, just the people we interact with every day. And Stratos couldn't have happened if it wasn't for us being here, because I could call up Einar Evelson, who he's probably worn spacesuits more than anybody. He flew U-2s and SR-71s. He flew high altitude Grobe, 300 different aircraft. And it's like, Einar, you know, hey, I got a project, you know, and he's there
Yeah.
with a spacesuit.
Yeah.
Rick Searfoss, shuttle commander.
Yeah,
You know,
right.
Rick, I got some questions about, you know, the rocket planes and, you know, who's got the best plane, the best rocket. And you could tap into this so easily. And still today, I can call friends of mine with Scaled or Northrop. It's just an amazing community. We're really lucky to be here.
You mentioned scale. I kind of thought of Burt Rutan. Oh, I thought you had a question. You're just telling us it's time. We're
Yeah.
done. You remind me of Walt Disney with the ideas, the excitement, the dreaming.
Quick story, I don't know if I can fit it in.
You have 10 seconds.
My early, I'm never gonna make it in 10 seconds.
Well, you know what? We're going to have you come back in the
Okay.
next section.
And I'll tell you my Walt Disney story.
The Walt Disney story.
Because he's one of my first memories.
Art Thompson, Sage Cheshire Aerospace, and A2ZFX. Thank you.
Thanks, Chris. Love it.
Hey, welcome back. This is section number 3 of Minding Your Business with the Lancaster Chamber of Commerce. I'm Chris Spiker of Antelope Valley Florist. Aaron Goldstein. We're still talking with Art Thompson, right?
Yeah.
Sage Cheshire. And we were going to talk about AV Nice, so this is a perfect time. Art, you have a Walt Disney story?
Yeah, you were mentioning about Walt Disney, and my dad, my parents were both teachers, they taught biology, chemistry, and physics, which is kind of what drove me into that field, I think. And my dad, when he was getting his degree for teaching, he worked as a air conditioning tech for commercial air conditioning. So he would go out in the field and install these units, and daycare wasn't real common back then, so he'd take my sister and I. And so one of my earliest memories at like 18 months, 2 years old, was my dad installing this commercial centrifugal unit on somebody's house. And the guy entertained my sister and I by taking us for a ride around his backyard in his train. And it was Walt Disney carrying me in his lap, riding around his yard. And that's my earliest memory, is sitting in Walt Disney's lap, going for a ride around his yard on his train.
And that barn still exists. Hidden Los Angeles talks about it every once in a while.
Yeah.
The barn out behind the house.
Yeah, well, I just remember being fascinated about all the mini bridges and the topography and everything, and so that was an early inspiration for me of how are things made, you know, and thinking about stuff, and so it's kind of cool.
And that's right when he was just about ready to open Disneyland.
He had already opened it, yeah, so it was, that was probably back in '58, so a few years
Yeah,
later.
he opened in 55 or 56.
But that was his dream, you know, and so that's the thing is you know, you and I were just talking about small valley and big minds, right? Is that
Right.
we have to be willing to dream large, and that's where when people come to me with crazy ideas, I never stop to think about their crazy ideas. I just start thinking about how do I accomplish it.
So you rarely say on first glance, you rarely say no.
Yeah.
That's crazy, no.
People give me a hard time because they say I don't know the word no,
Ah.
unless it's K-N-O.
Yeah.
Right.
You know.
So you know.
So I gave you an AV Nice wristband.
I like it.
AV Nice was something we borrowed from Minnesota Nice, which is people back there, they're Midwest, they
They're
do nice
nice.
things. They're nice. And I thought we need to create a more positive attitude
Yeah.
here in the Valley. The way we talk about ourselves, what we say about each other.
Yeah, if you think positively, it goes positively. I always say that what you project is what you get back. If you're negative, you're just going to get negative back. If you're positive to the people around you, you're going to get positive feedback. And we got to think about the way we want to live our lives.
Yeah.
You know, what do we want out of life? Do we want to be miserable by arguing and screaming at people all the time? It's not worth it. Life is too short.
So you don't think being positive, people wonder what's he up to or what's wrong with him, or
But you can't worry about it. That's got to be their problem, right? You got to just be positive.
right now at the flower shop, we're part of a project called Be a Santa to a Senior.
I like it.
And some folks at Home Alone, it's care and care mainly for aged people
Yeah.
inside. They thought, you know, there's a lot of seniors that need a Christmas, and so they fill out these little cards. Hey, my name's Bob F. for whatever his last name is, and age, and this is what I'd like. I'd like a Dodger baseball cap and a lap blanket and some stationery.
And it doesn't take much to make people happy.
It doesn't take much.
And they're very surprised, like, why are you doing this?
Yeah.
And I always tell people, you know, it's selfishness. You know, like, what do you mean? It's my own selfishness because I get a lot of really positive feelings out of being positive to people and being nice to people.
Yeah.
I mean, if people, when they do that, they realize that flush of happy feelings that they get. I mean, it sounds kind of sappy.
Do you open doors for
Right.
people?
Oh yeah, all the time.
And do they ever, like, not notice?
Yeah,
Sometimes
that
they
happens.
just walk through.
Yeah, that happens. I thought you meant.
Oh, like a door opener, like introducing
yeah,
people.
introducing
No, I
people
mean
to-
just like you're
yeah.
at a store and you
Yeah,
open a door,
no,
you hold it open
but yeah.
because that's the way you were trained.
Yeah, and sometimes people are like,
They just walk through.
walk right by because
Yeah.
they think you're the doorman. Yeah.
It's a great job being a doorman. I think when we get to heaven, they're going to have all the
Yeah.
good seats there.
Yeah, you want to, you know, people just need to be a little more positive to each other at times. I think it's amazing what you get back out of it by giving.
Yeah, we can change the world, right?
I hope so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So they're bringing in the gifts, Be a Santa to a Senior, and
That's a good idea.
I was at the Honda place last week, and the lady that's in charge of the helpful Honda
Yep.
person, I thought, what a great idea. You know, it's a commercial
Yep.
idea, but I mean, it really goes a long way to build community,
Yeah.
and they're looking for projects.
Yeah.
I'm thinking, how cool is this?
Yeah, I think it started out kind of a corny idea when Honda started it, but then I think they started realizing that if we actually do this like we really care, and so it's actually, I think, given them a lot of benefit back too.
Yeah, it's
And
going to be huge.
it's cheap advertisement.
It
you know,
really
when you
is.
think about it. And same thing on the street, it's like being nice to somebody. Robin Williams used to always say that if we were really smart as a society, we'd make it cool to be old, because we're all going to get there eventually.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
And that's the time to be able to, when you're over a certain age, to be able to tell some stories and give some people
yeah.
the benefit of.
Yeah, that's what amazes me, like we were talking about this valley having so many incredible people, is that, a lot of the pilots that were at Edwards in their younger days may have been a little bit arrogant because they were the hot shot, they were the cowboy on campus. But what you find is as they get older, they start realizing that there's definitely an end of life. And they start thinking about how I want to share some of my experiences. And so when you go out and meet the Bob Cardenases and Bob Hoover and all these incredible people, Joe Kittinger, from our community, and you can go now and talk to them, and the stories. Dana Kilinowski, you know Dana. I mean, she's an amazing person with incredible interview skills. She has tape recordings of all these people because when she goes, they want to spill their guts and tell their story. And it's amazing, all the history. It just makes your head spin. And that's in this valley.
Fitzhugh Fulton.
Yeah. Fitzhugh, I mean, you could just go on and on and on.
Yeah.
The number of people in this valley and the history and what they have to share. It's incredible. With the X-15, Pete Knight, the history, all that. And that was all here, the fastest people in the world.
Right here.
Right here in the Antelope Valley.
Your neighbors, and you get to watch them. And
and you get to walk up and talk to them.
Yeah,
It's
first
very
name
cool.
basis, you just see them somewhere.
Yeah.
Nothing
So-
like it.
Yeah, so I consider myself lucky that I've crossed paths with a lot of giants like Walt Disney. Jack Northrop was another one that I really loved. Jack, he was an amazing man. Made the tabletop model that they gave to him on his deathbed. And when he saw that, he was never cleared for the B-2. And when John Cashin took it to the hospital to give it to him, he said that Jack's words were, "God kept me alive this long to see this day." Because his dream was always to see the Flying Wing go into production. That's part of this community.
Wow.
It's just amazing.
Well, that is kind of like the power of the dream.
Yeah, power of the dream. And the dream starts as a kid. So if we can inspire the kids at 5 years old, 10 years old, guess what they're going to become when they get older? That's what's amazing, is that we have the ability to share with these kids, get them into STEM programs and STEAM programs. And the school district here is doing a great job of that. I gotta say, Raul Maldonado of the school district, he's out pushing STEM education and STEAM education, and they're opening up all these different charter schools. And I think about if I had access to that when I was a kid, it just amazes me, because they're bringing shops back, they're bringing, programming into the schools.
So how about you and your business? Do you have room for interns and
Yeah.
people that are learning and
Yeah.
people that could spend a day seeing how that $500,000 lathe works? Or-
Yeah, I try and encourage them because we've given tours to a lot of different companies and schools. We had CSUN, Cal State University Northridge was here, and we had some high schools coming through, and trying to work with some of the engineering groups, because we have the largest water jet in the valley. People don't know that we have all this equipment.
But that's not like fun, is it? That's a tool.
It is fun in a way, because
Yeah,
you
wear
can make some
shorts.
really cool things with it. We do a lot of really neat things. So between the water jet and the mills and thermoforming, we do composites, bag laminates and wet laminates and castings and
In the Antelope Valley.
yeah, we make all the PPD covers for F-35, and we've rough cut some of the stuff for B-2, and make stuff for movie projects. We did some stuff for Star Wars, the ride down at Disney, and so it's a big mix of things, from children's chew toys to re-entry vehicles for ex-NASA guys. So we have a lot of fun.
So that's really the only requirement, is it has to be fun.
Well, there are jobs that aren't fun, but it does help.
You got to work on that business plan a little
I
bit.
got to work on
Yeah,
the business
fine-tune
plan.
it a
Yeah,
little
that'd be
bit.
a good idea. So,
Well, and thanks for being involved with the Chamber of Commerce.
the Chamber of Commerce are great people. I mean, again, this valley is so wonderful. I'm blessed to have so many good friends, and they really know how to promote the industry and what we're doing. So
So we want to keep the aerospace industry in California. We want to keep it in the Antelope Valley.
Yep.
And testing.
Yep, and testing,
Very
flight testing.
important. Very important.
Yep, and Steve Knight did a great job at helping to push a lot of that with new jobs, and I think a big part of why Northrop stuck around with B-21
Wow.
was because of Steve really helped us in that. So we're lucky.
Have been talking with Art Thompson from Sage Cheshire Aerospace.